C'est Takeways de l'XCP.
Okay. Hi, Cyrus. How are you?
I am doing good, Lexi. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. So let's just jump right into it. Where are you people from? Where are you from?
I'm actually originally an immigrant from Afghanistan. We came as a refugee in 2002 from Pakistan, I guess. But I'm originally from Afghanistan. Mom and dad are both from Afghanistan. We would live there till I was just 2 years old. Long story about how we got to Pakistan with obviously the Taliban taking over and all that. Lived in Pakistan for 12 years in different refugee camps and different places, and then moved to come to the U.S. in 2002 as a refugee.
So the lesson that I want to talk to you about today, I think really just encapsulates the layers of identity that you have. And I want to talk to you about being an outsider, even when others think that you're not, but this very complex and layered identity gap of just always feeling othered, which I assume probably stems from your background, not only as an immigrant, but as a refugee and as an Afghan man, a proud Afghan man living in the United States. So I guess my question to you is, when is the first time in your life that you remember where you just felt like you weren't like other people?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I've been kind of on a run, to be honest with you, since I was 2 years old because
Yeah.
I grew up, obviously, I was born in Afghanistan. I was 2 years old. The Taliban came in the early 90s, invaded Afghanistan, bombed our house when I was in it. It's me, my mom, my dad, and two other siblings. Somehow we survived, and then from there on, like we just were on the run to get out of Afghanistan
Mm.
to be free and to be safe. And got to Pakistan, and then in Pakistan, different refugee camps for a couple of years, then found an apartment and lived there for 12 years. So I guess from like since I remember, to be honest with you, as when I was like 2 years old, and we basically were just kind of told, "Hey, get out of your country,"
Right.
or it's and my mom kind of took us, and so from there on out, even in Pakistan, like that's not your country, right? Like because they speak different, they dress different, they act different. I
Hmm.
mean, all this stuff is different. So I've always my whole life have been an outsider in some capacity since I remember to be out 2 years old, I guess.
As you talk about that, I'm thinking about like all of these feelings of loneliness, of abandonment, of just like, I would argue, like sheer social anxiety, right? I also think of possibly an intrinsic superpower that you now have, and I'm projecting, that you had to create in order to survive, which is this ability to learn people and culture and social interactions a lot faster than other people. Is that true for you? And what does that look like now as an adult? You know, running multiple companies, having hundreds of people that work for you, but this intrinsic superpower of like, I can emotionally read this room and I can emotionally read you because of my background as a refugee.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the thing about it is when you deal with the trauma that I've dealt with
Right.
the last so many years, I you just have to have thick skin. I think that's what it
Oof.
comes down to. Like because you're survivor mode, right? Like you're literally surviving. Like honestly, even today, like like some people might look at me and be like, "Look at that guy. He has a 10,000 square feet beautiful office, people working for him. He's got an executive assistant, a nice home, and a family, beautiful family, blah blah blah." And all the vacations that he wants to do. And even today, like I never ever uh, feel like I ever like belong because like we talked about this a little bit. Like I'm always like chasing something, and I don't and a lot of times I don't even know what I'm chasing, but I've just been born and raised in this environment of survival. And no matter how much money and fame and happiness I have, I feel like a survivor will always just try to live the survival life.
Right.
And I even I'm even like in therapy and stuff because I know myself, and I know for my marriage sake, for my kids' relationship's sake, I don't ever want them to be that way or to be raised that
Mm.
way or to grow up always wanting more and more and more and to be able to fit in. To even when you have a place to fit in, you always want to like try to get out of it and try to go somewhere else because you're like, oh, I gotta go survive. Life is too good. Like, what's going
Ooh.
on here? You know, like what is, like, it's too good. Like, what else is gonna happen tomorrow that's gonna basically like blow this thing up? And then like, I gotta go back to survival mode, if that makes sense. It's just a weird concept that people like me coming from different countries and going through trauma and all that stuff have to deal with on a daily basis, and in some capacity almost putting on a different mask, if you say, in front of people, and having a thick skin to deal with certain things that you're dealing with, and honestly, it's very very different way to live life, and I'm working on it as we speak. But I want to talk about it because if I don't talk, and I know a lot of people feel this way, right? But some people are ashamed to talk about it, and I will talk about it anywhere because we as humans need to understand that if you have problems and if you don't talk about it, if you keep it inside of you, it truly will blow up at one point, and it couldn't be good.
I agree. When I think of things like that, I am not an immigrant. I'm not a refugee. Um, I am a black woman born and raised in St. Louis, Missouri, whose people's history is the enslavement of West Africans in this country. So there are many themes that you speak about that really hit home for me. They just come in different vessels, right?
Mhm.
My question to you is community. Because for me as a black woman, I always tell people my resilience and my strength and my love come from community. I am not alone, mentally, emotionally, physically, but like the physical aspect of being raised in a community. And my question to you is, what does community mean to you? And how is that performed, especially as a person that had so much displacement growing up?
Mhm. Yeah, that's a great question. I feel like com- I feel like as you grow up, you appreciate community a lot more, than when you're younger and kind of going through life in your teenage years and then survival mode in your 20s of trying to figure out what do I want to do, and all of that stuff, and the communities change as you go through your life and different phases of your life, right? So I look at my community when I got out of college, when I was just like a young guy and kind of this free, like my parents are not watching me anymore, like I could go to the bars and do stupid stuff and like just live life. And one of my best phases of my life, I had so much fun. So I'm never going to say don't do it, or it wasn't this or that. Like, it was a part of my life, it made me who I am. But that community today is not going to be the community I need today to be able to live a life right now at a 36-year-old with three young kids, 8, 5, and 3, with the wife, and a neighborhood and people that obviously report to me and work for me and want me to push them, right? So your community, I would say, changes as you go through your life, and your community, to be honest with you, for me at least, I work with like my brothers. Two of my brothers work for me, and then my sister works for me, and then one of the other leadership executive in our team, she's been with me for like 9 or 10 years. So I consider her my older sister as well. So to me, and then my immediate family, like my wife and the three kids, like so, and then my mom. So I feel like for me, when it comes to community, right, at you go through different things. Like right now, that's my community. That's like my people I go to for certain things, and when I'm down, and a couple of best friends that I have now that I truly can go to and say, man, I'm out having a hard time. As men, like, we're not supposed to have a hard time. We're supposed to just kind of like, or under the rug, and just kind of, it's okay, you're a man, like, you'll figure it out. But that's not okay. Like, it's okay to talk about when you're going through stuff, right? So for me, community is like, who do I go to when I run through trouble? And I'm not very good at sharing, but I'm learning as I've gone through therapy and different things to share more about what's going on in your life, because your community is only going to help you if they know what to help with, if that makes sense. So to me, that would be my community, is the people I'm talking to on a daily basis, people I'm impacting on a daily basis. And right now it's definitely different than when it was when I first got married, with certain friend group that I had that I was hanging out with, and certain mentors that were helping me in my younger years. And then before that, obviously through college years, and then high school years was completely different, right? Because you don't want to listen to the community. You want to do your own thing with your friends. And so I would say for me, community is always changing, and it's a part of your, like I call it, like your 5 closest people you talk to the most, if that makes sense. And you become the 6th person, the people that you hang out with, your top 5 people that you hang out with the most, and that's exactly what I would say the community is to me right now.
Let's just shout out to Team Jaffrey. Shout out to Mama Jaffrey.
Yeah, exactly.
Clearly, she's doing something great. I love this. I want to go deeper into something you said that was so profound. That you said the community that you had in your 20s had to change for you to be who you are now. And I think that as we grow up, it is sometimes hard to let some people go. Lovingly or unlovingly, you know, Cyrus, there's some stories, right? Like we all got some stories, but I think part of growth and maturity is to recognize when a specific community is no longer serving you and having to navigate the uncoupling of that. Tell me more about that, because that is very profound.
Yeah, so I think the stage of life that I am in right now, I always think of, does this person bring value and make my life better, happier, or does this person just drain me? Like I don't want to hang out with somebody that's always negative. Like I just have no desire, because when you hang out with 5 negative people, you become the 6th negative people. So you got to be really careful who you choose as part of your community, as part of your like Fab 5, we call it, right? So I feel like it's really, really important to change your community as you go. And there are a couple of people maybe that I still maybe talk to, but they're not a part of my community anymore. It's not like I don't like them. It's not like they're bad people or anything, right? But 98% of them are not even in my life anymore, because I'm just in a different part of my life. But there's a couple of those that I look back still and I'm like, wow, that person does bring some value. That person does have good values. That person does have things that I look up to, like he's a good father, or he's a good businessman, or he's just a good person to talk to. He's very easy. He's very communicative. So I always look at people like, what value do you bring to me? And that's not me being selfish by any means, of this is what it's about me, what value do you bring to me. But I feel like the more we hang out with people that actually bring the best version of yourself, I truly believe that it's going to make you the best version of yourself if you keep doing that. So that's what I would say. From the past, sometimes you just have to put it in your past, because if you have the same community today than you did when you were in your early 20s, the things that you were doing, you probably wouldn't have the life that you have today. Because they, as I look at them in different lives that they have, some great, some not so great, I just don't see how they can bring value. So that's how I evaluate people that I have in my life today. And you also have to understand, as a business owner, as a father of 3, you also have to prioritize. Like, what's your, like, going down the line, right? Like, your number one is obviously God Almighty. Like, I believe in God. I believe in spend some time with him, prayers, all that stuff, if you believe in that stuff. So that's number one, like reaching out to him, asking for help. Number 2 is my wife, right? So how much time am I supposed to have with them? How much time am I supposed to give her? How do we connect on a daily basis? So it doesn't turn into something where it's just basically like a roommate at this point, right? Because that happens when you have young kids, 8, 5, and 3. There's a lot of chaos at home. And then number 3 is my kids. And then number 4 then becomes obviously my brothers and them. And then number 5 becomes work. So work is all the way in the bottom. And then 6 becomes friends. So if you go through that line, and if you're connecting the dots and spending time in that fashion going down, you're most likely not going to have time for number 6 or number 7 or number 8. What a lot of people do, what I see, is they go to number 6 and 7 first and then come to the top. And I think that's where the disconnect comes in, where you get in this funks of hanging out with too many 7s and you're not hanging out with number 1 and number 2 and number 3 that truly bring you happiness, right? That truly bring the best version of yourself. And that's what I do on a daily basis, just trying to figure out, hey man, no matter what happens, I gotta check off at least top 3. And if I can do the top 3, the rest of the stuff is going to fall into place. And maybe once a month I can do 6 and 7 to where at least I'm connecting with these people. But those 6 and 7 have to bring some kind of value in my life, because otherwise I just don't have enough time. And people say this all the time, I just don't have time. Well, you do have time, honestly. Like, you're going to talk to God or your wife if you're mad at each other or something really bad happens in your life. They're like, hey, God, like, can you please help me now? Like, but what happened when all the things were going good? You weren't reaching out to him, right? Or when your life was really good with your wife, you weren't doing certain things. And now that it's going downhill, you're trying to fix it. So why don't you just keep getting oil change in your life daily versus waiting for the tire to go out?
I love that. I love how you numbered those things out. But we got to keep it a book, Cyrus. You are actually very good at your job. Okay. multiple companies, lots of insurance going on, hundreds of people that look up to you, work for you, want to collaborate with you. So I guess my question is that how have you really figured out a rhythm to be there for people, or for people to feel like you're there so they can be their best selves while working on all of these things? Because that's important as well.
100%. And but what I say to that question is, if you don't do 1, 2, and 3, 4, the 5 doesn't go the way you want it to go. For example, like if I don't feel connected with my wife in the morning, like we're maybe fighting and stuff, I come home, I come to work and I'm a little defeated, less energy, and then just translates into the business and the business goes down. I want to make sure, because like the business is what makes, honestly, like our family happy, because it provides for such a kind of life that I want to live and my family to live and all of that stuff. So it's super, super important. So every day it's a part of my life, right? But if 1, 2, and 3 doesn't happen, so think about it this way. You're on top of a mountain. You got this huge, giant corporation. You're happy. You're Elon Musk, blah, blah, blah. But nobody's behind you. It's just you. Right? And that's a terrible life. Like, no matter how much money you have, right? But now think about it this way. You're on top of the mountain. You're doing all these great things. Maybe it's not as tall. It's okay. Maybe you're in the mountain right underneath. But you got your wife holding you. You're listening to to God. You got your kids are right there. Dad, I love you. Thanks for spending all that time these last 20 years, because now I'm with you, right? So one of the things I say is, when my daughter is old enough, she's 8. Somebody asked me, "What's your definition of success?" I said, my daughter wanted to come home on Sundays to have dinner with me every Sunday because she wants to, is the definition of success in my life. Because things you did that really did matter. The biggest impact we can make in our life is the 3 people that you can literally guide, because they don't know anything. They're blind, and you're a person that's responsible for making sure this person becomes a good person, kind, humble, all this stuff, and make a difference in the society in some fashion. So we have one of the biggest responsibilities in the world, but all that is driven by the job that you have, the organization that you run, because all that's going to excel your family life. A lot of people don't understand that piece of it. A lot of people just think work, give a little bit of time to family. It should be the other way, or at the same time, to make sure you're doing that stuff. Because if I'm in good mood and I feel like I've got a good relationship with my wife, God, family, all that stuff, when I come to work, the 4 or 5 hours that I get instead of the 8 hours are going to be way more productive for me than anything else, because I have energy, I'm excited, I'm ready to go, because I know when I go home, then they will be there, then my bucket will be filled, and then I can come back tomorrow and do the same thing.
So as you talk, I hear a person that knows who they are, right? And I work in corporate spaces and I always tell folks, you know when a person walks in the room and they know who they are because their values come out. And I want to go a little bit deeper because I would argue the instability in your youth, you know, moving from country to country and place to place. It really does seem like Papa and Mama Jaffrey told you and your siblings, like, what we not gonna do is you not know who you are and therefore know your values. Tell me about that. Tell me about how your parents grew these humans, regardless of the physical instability of where they live, to really honor and value and know in the core who they are as people. Yeah.
Yeah, I think what I would say about my mom specifically, because I never really had a dad. I haven't seen him in 25 years or whatever, and never really saw him when he was there. So I was pretty much all six of our siblings, seven at one time. Now there's six of us, and all six of us were pretty much raised by our mom, by like a single mom that moved here, like knowing no English whatsoever. It's like, all right, I got these six people. We'll figure this thing out. I mean, it's a crazy story, but I think some of the lessons that my mom has taught me about who I really am has always been, you always treat people right. Always. You be respectful to your elders. You be kind. You always say yes sir, yes ma'am. What can I do for you? How do I care? She's always been a caring person. She always would take a shirt off her back to give to somebody that doesn't have a shirt, and she doesn't even have to know them. And that's one of the qualities that I take from my mom. And it's all of our brothers are that way. We're always thinking of how do we help other people versus even helping ourselves, right? So that's been one of the things that's been pretty powerful that I've used in our organization. It's like everyone in my organization knows that, like, if they need me, I will always be there for them because I care about them. And one of the definitions of leadership is caring. Like, if you truly just know that, if your organization knows that you care about them, your organization will go a long ways. If they just know that you're not faking it, you're not just like doing it for them to work hard for you, just let them know that, hey man, there's a way to do it, right? As you get bigger, it gets really tough, but just them knowing once in a while that, hey, like, he's really there. He's a kind person. He's really going to have my back when something happens. That's pretty important. But my mom from the beginning has always been, hey, know exactly who you are. You don't never have to change who you are, because at the end of the day, money shouldn't change you if you truly know inside who you are. Fame shouldn't change you if you truly know inside who you are. But a lot of people just don't dig deep of who they truly are, right? Like for me, it was pretty simple, you know. For me, when it comes to knowing yourself, is almost like how you treat other people, if that makes sense. Of seeing, like, when I come to the office, I'm always like, okay, is everybody else okay? Like, everybody doing the things that they need to do? Can I help them with anything, right? And I also have so much time. Same thing at home. Can I help my kids? Can I help my wife? Because I'm a giver. Like, I always give, if that makes sense. But that's who I am, right? And that's not good. That's not bad by any means. But it is who I am, and I know who I am, and I feel like if I keep doing that, it's worked well so far, and I feel like if I just keep doing that, it is going to at one point direct me in the right direction. Because here's the thing, you really got to know who you are, but I honestly don't know if 100% I can pinpoint exactly who I am. Nobody can, because a version of you changes all the time on who you are and who you're becoming. The big pieces stay together, but as your life changes, you do become somebody different, right? But the fundamentals always stay the same, the kind of person you are.
I agree with that. And for the record, I think everyone should be evolving. If you don't, we have a much bigger issue, Cyrus, a much bigger issue. But I do believe that the foundation of those values should stay the same, right? So for you as a giver, regardless, you know, you're 36 right now, but you know, when you're 52, those foundations should stay the same. So shout out to the mama, shout out to Mama Jaffrey for killing it. My next question for you, you mentioned earlier in our conversation about how it is very possible, due to you always from like an outsider, that you don't really have a destination, you're always chasing, right? Tell me more about that, because on one hand, I'm like, oh, that's hustle. That's drive, never settling for what you have now. I'm not gonna lie. Part of me, and my Instagram soft life era, as the Gen Zs are calling it, I'm like, that can be sometimes stressful. Like, when do we rest, right? Tell me more about that process and that thinking.
Yeah, I leave the resting to the Gen Zs. They do plenty of it. Man, that's such a good question. That is something that I struggle with, and as men, it's really hard to say you struggle with things, and I struggle with that. I think um, one of the biggest strengths of mine is not a lot of things can phase me. I mean, there's not a lot of things that could go really wrong, and I'm just gonna fall apart. And it's really easy for a lot of people to fall apart in certain ways, and for me, not a lot of things could bring me down. And if it is, not a lot of people know that I'm down, if that makes sense. And that's because I truly believe that everything that happens to you is a part of your journey. And you either take what happened to you as a positive and find the positives in it, or you can take that and go down with it and live in sorrow. Like, it's up to you what you want to do with it. So the worst thing that can happen to you, how can you turn that into something positive, which is all my book is about, is, hey, my house got bombed when I was 2 years old. I lived in a refugee camp. Our helicopter, when we were going to Pakistan, got hit well, got shot at to get down. So, like, I should have been dead many times in my life, and I don't deserve sometimes the things that I'm given now, right? But at the same time, all those things that have happened to me, I've used it as fuel for the next chapter of my life. And looking back now, I thought when I left my last job 5 years ago, um, I was really, really down on myself because I was doubting myself. I was starting back again from scratch 5 years ago when I left my last job. The relationship ended really strangely on that company that I was working with. And I had a lot of doubts, and because in the past when I've made certain changes, it was just me. I'm like, I've lived on rice and beans my whole life. Like, I don't need anything more than that. All I live on is rice and beans. I don't need anything fancy. I drive a 2011 Dodge. Like, I don't need anything fancy. But now I had kids, and that was the biggest difference, and a wife. So now I'm like, I've got a kid. I've got two kids at the time, 5 years ago, and then I have my wife that depends on me. The financial stress of that, because I'm the man of the house. My wife didn't work. I'm like, man, that was really, really hard for me as I was going through that chapter. And I thought I was in it was probably one of the worst time of my life, being down on myself and doubting myself on a daily basis. But here's the thing. Not one person knew I was doubting myself, because when I was at the office, let's go, we're gonna make this happen, guys, this is gonna be so fun. Like, it was that mentality. Like, everybody was like, dude, like, you're like, how many Red Bulls have you had? I'm like, no, I have just nothing. I'm just ready to make stuff happen, right? And same thing with my wife, but I wrote journals about it, and my wife, and I didn't even share with my wife a lot of this stuff. And then one day she read all those journals, and it brought us closer, because I'm not a very good communicator sometimes, and I'm trying to get better at it. And she was like, I honestly had no idea you were going through all this stuff as you were building the business in the first year or two, because it was really, really tough. So long story short, I'm always chasing something, and I'm always using what happened to me as fuel to chase the next version of myself. Like, where I'm at today, like 5 years from now, how can I become a better dad? How can I spend more time? How can I become a better husband? How can our organization go from 10 million in revenue to 20 million in revenue in the next couple of years? Like, those are things I'm always chasing. And a lot of those things are literally to keep me driven on a daily basis. And there is no, you could say, hey, like, is it a billion? Like, get to $1 billion valuation one day and then you can stop and rest? No, because that's not like how I'm driven. Because when you get to 1 billion, how do you get to 2 billion, right? Like, that's where you kind of get to. And then same thing with like the husband and the kids thing. Like, when you have this like deepest connection with your kids, what are you gonna do? Just like stop? right? Like you're not. You're going to keep building on it because that's how connections and relationships are built on, is just working on it. So that's just kind of how I'm driven. I'm always looking into positivity and chasing the next thing, because that keeps me driven. That keeps me waking up in the morning and saying, okay, what we got going on today? And I would tell you, man, it's exhausting. There's times where I'm like, man, I'm just burnt out. I'm just stressed. I'm burnt out. I've got all these things going on. I just want to sit in a room, a dark room for 4 hours and not do anything sometimes, and that's okay because the next day I wake up, I'm back to doing what I need to do. So anyway, so that's a little bit about, Lexi, of what I think of when I'm chasing things and how I use fuel for things that have happened to me in the past as a way to energize myself moving forward.
Yeah. And I would also just like to add a little tidbit. I now, as a new parent, what I'm realizing about these babies, Cyrus, and I could get advice from you,
Yeah,
is that as soon as you get really deep with your kid, they change.
100%.
And then you guys start from zero because they've decided that everything is now switched up.
Wow.
And I think that's a very interesting symbolism and metaphor about life and about work and about your love life, is always continuing to chase because people change and money changes and audience changes and work changes. And really the only thing that is constant in this world, unfortunately, is change. And so it sounds like you are very comfortable
With
with
change.
change. Yeah. And that may actually go, I'm about to therapy you and I'm not a therapist, so don't take this advice. It's not board certified. But that actually may kind of go into this part about being an outsider as well, right? Of this constant change.
100%. What I would
Yeah.
tell you about before I go to the outsider real quick,
Yeah.
my daughter. So my daughter's 8, and this whole I've seen her changes because I would read her a book every day for the longest time. Every night before she goes to bed, we would read, and then it came a time to where books kind of started changing. It was first like just letters, and then sentences, and then paragraphs, and now it's whole books, right? That she's reading, and things I was doing with her. The way we were connecting was donuts. The way then we were connecting was at night. I would tell her about princesses. She loved like Bella and Cinderella and stuff, and I'd be like, "Hey, you're kind like Belle. You're beautiful like Cinderella." Like every night, I would tell her these like things, and there comes times like, Dad, I'm 6. Like, don't tell me no. Like, I don't do princesses anymore. Then it came a point to where like then she's like, hey, I want to go places. So we always went to football games and basketball games and volleyball games. And then it started happening to where like she started bringing her friends now. So now we have to go with friends, do certain things. And then the next now is like she doesn't even want me to go with her. She's like, hey, can I just go with my friend Charlie instead of me going by myself?
Dad,
We're
you're not cool
benefiting her.
anymore. You're not cool
Right.
anymore.
I'm not. And she's 8 years old. So as you see her life changing and my relationship of how I'm building my relationship with her, it constantly changes, and it's going to. When she's a teenager, when she's into boys and relationships and stuff, like she's not going to want to talk to me about certain things. She's not going to want me in her room to read her a book or play with her dolls and stuff, which we always do. Like things constantly change. That's the same thing about work, same thing about your relationship with your wife, same thing your relationship with your coworkers. Like it needs to change because if it doesn't, it becomes stagnant. And stagnant is a place that is death.
Tell me about therapy. And I think it's important to talk about this because in this day and age, I think therapy is still taboo. I think therapy is even more taboo in colored homes, right? Cyrus, we usually do the whole like put some fairy dust on it and put that in the closet. We got things to do. Okay. And then also I think in the patriarchy for a man of color to be so public and honest about that journey. Tell me about that. What influenced you to start this journey, and how has this journey, in your opinion, made you a different, maybe better person, human in the world?
Yeah, no, the therapy journey has been pretty amazing. My wife my wife has been in therapy for a long time, and she invited me. She said, "Hey, you should go." We've done couples therapy, couples counseling. We still do it, and then I go by myself as well because there are certain things where I feel better with the person that I'm talking to, and it's been life changing. I wrote a tiny bit of it in my book, and I still don't feel comfortable with it. Like sexually assaulted when I was a young kid, and the first time it ever came out of my mouth was with my therapist. My wife had no idea, and I got home and I felt okay talking to my wife about it. And I was like, why did I feel comfortable sharing the deepest secret of my life, which was embarrassing for the longest time, with my therapist and not with my wife? But now, because of my therapist, I've shared that with my wife, and we have the deepest connection now because she knows every deep secret of me. And that's pretty powerful for you, because therapy gives you a place to go vent. Therapy gives you a place to go be yourself. They're legally required to not share any of that information with anybody, not even court, attorneys, nothing. So there is a place where you can literally go to, man, and just open up and just tell them what's going on in your life. And it feels so good to get that heavy weight off your chest that's been just weight, especially for men, because men keep this forever. I mean, I promise you, there's 100-year-olds, 90-year-olds that have literally kept it inside for 80, 90 years, their whole life. And could you imagine holding 20-pound brick on your chest for 80 years of your life? I mean, that's gotta be daunting. And to just feel free to be like, I literally have nothing to hide. Like, it just feels, it's very hard to explain until you feel it. Because truly feeling like you have nothing to hide, nothing to be ashamed of, nothing to be embarrassed about, is a pretty, pretty powerful feeling. And it makes you a better version of yourself with your significant other and your family and your coworkers, because you're not masking to be somebody you're not.
It sounds like it feels like freedom. I think we're all striving to be free in many capacities, and it sounds like what this journey has taught you and made you feel, like this evolution, is like, I can 100% be free.
Mm-hmm.
And just the weight of that, and if I can just 100% be myself, what magic could come out of that, right?
It's powerful. It's powerful. I mean,
Yeah.
it's really, really hard to explain to people until they feel it.
Yeah.
It's one of the best feelings in the world. It really is. It's one of those things where, like, having my daughter, like, that was my first kid, was one of the
Yeah.
happiest times of my life. Being married to my wife, that when we got married, was one of the happiest days of my life. But I would put this, honestly, number 3 right there,
Yeah.
as far as just truly being, like, happy. And and I don't think many people know what true happiness is.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think many people know what the true meaning of love is until you truly have kids,
Oh, yeah.
where you truly find out, like, what love really is. It's a completely unconditional. They could kill somebody and you're still going to love them more than ever. I mean, it's just unbelievable. And those two things, when you can truly know the feeling of the meaning of love, and truly know the meaning of happy, and you have been happy before, it just your life starts to change in the most positive way possible.
So, last question for you. Reintroduce us to you. Cyrus, who are you?
Oh man, uh, deep question. To me, who I am, number one, foremost, is a dad. That's by far, if I die and there's no other thing other than, man, he was a good dad, um, I'm the happiest man alive, because you really have I have 3. You really have 3 people that you shape them who they are, from the minute they're born. And especially when it comes to girls and their relationship with if you're a father to your daughter, it's, unless you have a daughter, you really don't understand the difference between me and my boys' relationship. 2 boys' relationship is a lot different than me and my girl. And and like I said, like, the definition of success to me is when my daughter, because my sons will, just because they need me for certain things, but when my daughter comes to dinner on Sunday nights, or calls me and says, "Hey, Dad, I've got this boy I like, and can you give me some advice on what you would do?" That's happiness. That's true meaning of love. That's just definition of success. That's like a true, like, impact you're making, is pretty powerful. You know, a lot of people always want to make impact. I want to do this charity. I want to do this. I want to go to church. I want to work, and I have all these work people that I have impacting. But where you can truly make an impact are the people that are closest to you, because they will listen to you the most, because you have the most impact on them, because they truly know who you are. So people search for all outsiders to impact, to help, to do all these things. But some people that are literally your wife, your dad, your mom, your brother, your sister, your kids specifically, are the people that you can make the most impact on, and hoping that they take some of those lessons and go impact their kids and grandkids, and then it just kind of spirals from there, which is pretty powerful.
Well, there you have it, folks. I love it. I love it. Thank you so much for being here and being so vulnerable. This is a great conversation.
I loved it, Lexi. Thanks for having me.
Okay, thank you.